Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. This is Boris Tiesenhausen. Today is the 3rd of October and it's a very busy issue. So in this episode, Ukrainian drones attacked targets 1,500 kilometers from the border. In Russia, there have been calls for a special military operation against Kazakhstan. Meanwhile, at the Valdai Club, Putin talked about girls in kokoshniks who will defeat the West. Khrushchyovkas in Russia will be repainted so things don't look so bleak. And in the European Union, Russian Orthodox churches will be closed for espionage. There are more and more drones in Europe, so why couldn't Europe itself agree on a wall against these drones? We'll talk about this and much more in today's episode. There's a lot of interesting stuff ahead. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. So Ukrainian drones attacked an oil refinery in Orsk today. Immediately after that, one of Russia's main propagandists, Mardan, wrote the following. The Orsk oil refinery was attacked by drones. The distance from the Ukrainian border to Orsk is 1,400 kilometers. It's absolutely obvious that the drones were launched from Kazakhstan's territory. So here's the question. Isn't it time to conduct a raid on the territory of independent Kazakhstan in order to eliminate threats to Russia's national security? It would be best to carry out a sweep in Astana right away, Mardan wrote. Just so you understand, a raid on the territory of independent Kazakhstan, he put independent in quotation marks. Well, it's absolutely obvious, he writes, it's absolutely obvious that Mardan hasn't gotten a taste of his own medicine in a long time. I think the Kazakhs could arrange that for him, possibly. This Mardan should brush up on his history, so he'd just sit quietly and keep his mouth shut. Let him study the borders his Muscovy used to have, and as they say, let's make Muscovy small again. And taking this opportunity, I always send my regards to Kazakhstan and thank you for your support. That's just how it goes sometimes. But 1,400 kilometers, that's impressive. It's not the largest oil refinery, but just imagine the range Ukrainian drones can reach now. By the way, judging by the video, the drone was absolutely fierce. So this plant, the oil refinery in Orsk, processes about 7 million tons. In other words, oil refineries are being hit every day, and even such distances are no longer an obstacle. And then, quite predictably, Vladimir Putin himself showed up at the prestigious Valdai Discussion Club, and there he proceeded to do what he undeniably does best. He deliberately lied and issued menacing threats. And also, it has become increasingly apparent that he has, regrettably, finally and completely lost his marbles. I mean, Putin called on Russian women to wear kokoshniks in order to defeat the West. And Putin said, in Russia I was told that girls are now wearing kokoshniks. That makes me very happy. And that's how we'll defeat the West. Well, take a look at this video.
И вы знаете, сейчас вот еще подумал, мне вот недавно говорили, что у нас как бы возрождается такая русская традиция. Девочки, молодые девушки в какие-то всякие на свои мероприятия или где-то отдыхают, в бары и так далее, приходят в кокошниках, в русских нарядах. Вы знаете, это не шутка. Вот это, меня это очень радует. Почему? Потому что это значит, что несмотря на все попытки...
And this is no joke, says Putin. It's not a joke that Putin was told that some girls are out drinking in bars wearing kokoshniks, and he's very happy about it, and that means the West has been defeated. I wonder who keeps telling him these stories about girls in kokoshniks. And Putin complained Clinton refusing Russia's NATO bid. And Putin also complained about Clinton for refusing Russia, which wanted to join NATO. Putin repeated the war in Ukraine could have been... At the same time, Putin once again repeated the claim that the war he started in Ukraine could have been prevented if NATO had not moved closer to Russia's borders, if Ukraine had maintained real sovereignty. And look at how he tries to somehow rewrite his greatest disgrace, the war in Ukraine, historically. So according to this logic, Putin says that if NATO had not moved closer to Russia's borders, there would have been no war with Ukraine. But NATO has been moving closer for a very long time, since the very beginning of Putin's rule. And why didn't Putin go to war with NATO countries? In 1999, Poland, which borders the Russian Federation in the Kaliningrad region, became a NATO member. Poland, bordering Russian Federation in Kaliningrad, becomes a NATO member. Why didn't Putin go to war with Poland? Why didn't Putin go to war with Poland then? The year 2004. 4. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania become NATO members. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania become NATO members. Why didn't Putin, there it is, right up to your borders, why didn't he react? I'm listing countries, more expansion significant. I'm listing countries, more expansion significant. I'm naming the countries that border the Russian Federation. In 2023, Finland becomes a NATO member. In 2023, and this is an achievement, Finland joins NATO. Across the sea, Sweden joined. Across the sea, Sweden joined next year. So why didn't he attack them? So why didn't he attack those countries? Well, maybe it's not about NATO at all. From the very beginning of his rule, Putin did everything he could to make other countries seek protection from the alliance as quickly as possible. From the very start of his rule, Putin did everything to make other countries, especially Russia's neighbors, try to get protection from the alliance as quickly as possible. Aggressive ignorance is all that Russia has spread since Putin came to power. Constant threats, constant attacks against its neighbors. I just read you a quote from Mordon, who is planning to organize a raid into Kazakhstan. By the way, despite this, Mr. Tokayev is helping Putin circumvent the sanctions. Interconnected. You see how everything is interconnected. These constant threats from their side, sometimes Kazakhstan is a made-up country, sometimes Ukraine is not a real country, Azerbaijan is also not a real country. Basically, Russia is like one big drunken pot-bellied guy with Putin's stretched-out face on his t-shirt yelling, "We can do it again," after drinking too much somewhere at a foreign resort. That's Russia. The most interesting thing is that this whole unwashed boorish horde is only patriotic when nothing needs to be done. Shouting Kalinka Malinka, smearing drunken snot to shaman or Lyuba songs. They do. Shouting Kalinka Malinka, smearing snot to shaman or Lyub, they are capable. But to actually fight for the motherland, the way Putin always portrays it. No, sorry, that's not happening. But to fight for the motherland, as Putin always portrays it, no, only for money, nothing. Exclusively. If you take away payments from this biomass from Ukraine, no one left on the front line. Cut payments for Ukrainian biomaterial, none remain on the front line. And in Russia, the authorities are compelled to continually increase the financial payments and monetary compensation for those individuals who choose to go and fight almost every single month without fail. But even for big money, fewer and fewer fools are willing to go fight. Well, in every sense, fewer and fewer. And to make things less depressing for Russians, the State Duma proposed repainting Khrushchyovkas to make things more cheerful. Deputies from the New People faction proposed a project to repaint Khrushchyovkas and standard residential buildings in vibrant, rich colors. The authors of the initiative cited Chita as an example where building facades are painted bright yellow, lilac, and mint colors. Deputies emphasize scientific studies confirm a lively color palette improves environmental perception, making cities more attractive and vibrant. The deputies emphasize that scientific studies confirm that a lively color palette in the city improves the perception of the environment and makes cities more attractive and vibrant. But listen, by that logic, in Russia, gray and brown are the two colors that should be rolled out. By the way, they cited Chita as an example. I looked it up. Look, Chita, the district called Zenitka. Wooden outdoor toilets surrounded by piles of garbage and filth. Wooden toilets surrounded by garbage. If you paint that toilet in the center of the composition mint, everything instantly looks completely different. I think if you paint that toilet right in the composition center, mint, everything will instantly look different, right? Just imagine, a Russian wakes in Chita in one of those wooden houses and opens their mint shutters. Just imagine. A Russian wakes up in Chita in one of those wooden houses and opens their mint-colored shutters. In the distance, there's a neighbor who hanged himself on a birch tree, the one who came back from the so-called special military operation. Cesspit, kids sculpting Putin from manure. In the cesspit, kids are sculpting Putin from manure. And everything around is mint and lilac. Beautiful, isn't it beautiful? If you thought kokoshniks at Valdai Club were the end, you're wrong. If you thought kokoshniks were it, you're mistaken. There was... Sometimes you turn it on and ask yourself, how can this be happening? You turn it on and ask, how can this be happening? How can it even say something like that? Putin said that Europeans are fleeing their countries by the thousands and moving to Russia. He added, I can't say there's some kind of super influx, but it's thousands of people. Thousands. This flow is happening more for reasons of values than for political reasons. People are moving here, to Chita for example. There are enough houses there for everyone. He also clarified that thousands are applying for Russian citizenship, and the main reason, according to him, is the gender terrorism against children that he claims is practiced in the West. Meanwhile, according to Russia's Interior Ministry statistics, interest in moving to Russia has reached its lowest point in 11 years. Meanwhile, according to Russia's Ministry of Internal Affairs, interest in moving to Russia is at its lowest in 11 years. That's just Botoxed blabbering nonsense, isn't it? I'm almost certain that it's not thousands moving to Russia, but hundreds of thousands who have left Russia after the full-scale invasion. Certain it's not thousands Russia, hundreds of thousands left Russia while the invasion. Lie time? Why does he lie all the time? Do you know even one person, does anyone know, who in their right mind has moved from Europe to live in Russia? For the money, sure. People like Steven Seagal, they're making a good living. Where else? For the money, sure. People like Steven Seagal, they're making a living. Where else would he be? But here, he was actually planning to go fight for Putin, but then he said that he planned to fight for Putin, but he said maybe other time. Some other time, apparently. Or take that American Derek Huffman who came here with his family and, to speed up getting citizenship, went to the Ministry of Defense, signed a contract, and went off to kill innocent civilians in Ukraine. But you really have to be completely out of your mind to go fight for someone else's cause. But you have to be insane to go fight for a country that's not yours, against peaceful people of another country, a country that's not even yours, against the peaceful people of another country. There was also the Heyer family from Texas, USA. In Russia, they always make a showcase out of this. Look, a whole family is coming. That's enough for the first news story. So, they all moved to Russia with their 3 children, saying they wanted to escape the LGBT community in the US. But in the very first month, they lost all their savings and faced serious difficulties. Well, what did you expect? What did you expect? And since we're talking about values, Putin says people are moving for reasons of values. Of course, the Russian Orthodox Church. I checked the latest news and I think it's just wonderful. In Sweden, Russian Orthodox Church closing, espionage. A Russian Orthodox Church wants to close due to espionage. Westeros authorities appealed to the government to close the Moscow Patriarchate's Orthodox Church and seize the land. Westeros authorities appealed to the government to close the Moscow Patriarchate's Orthodox Church and seize its land. Well, the reason was information from intelligence services that the church is being used for espionage purposes. Information from intelligence services that the church is being used for espionage purposes, of course. If you were to audit all the land and properties that the Russian Orthodox Church has bought or leased, you would find some very unexpected coincidences. Many of them are located near important military facilities, airfields, logistics centers, and ports. So it's not so surprising, is it? In Moldova, priests campaigned in the elections for pro-Russian forces, and in Europe, churches are being used for espionage. In Moldova, priests campaigned in the elections for pro-Russian forces, and in Europe, churches are being used for espionage. I think everyone has long understood that the Russian Orthodox Church has absolutely nothing to do with faith. I think everyone has long understood that the Russian Orthodox Church has absolutely nothing to do with faith. Friends, let me remind you that we have an important fundraiser for the 101st Separate Brigade to purchase Termit ground robotic systems, which save the lives of our defenders. These ground-based evacuation drones transport wounded from battlefield to medics. Ground-based evacuation drones transport wounded battlefield to medics' safe place. This means that medics don't have to risk their lives. It's the Termit that does all of this. And the soldiers of the 101st Brigade have recorded a message for us. Please take a look. We, the soldiers of the 101st Security Brigade, are reaching out to Boris Tizengausen and his followers for help. We are very grateful to you for the drones you previously provided. Today, we are in great need of 2 Termit ground-based robotic systems for the rapid and timely evacuation of the wounded from the battlefield. In the current situation, this will help save their lives. Our units are fighting in the Kostiantinivka direction and in Chassiv Yar. We will continue to destroy the enemy and believe in your support. Glory to Ukraine!
In this particular instance and specific situation, we can confidently assert directly that based on our assessment, the evidence clearly indicates without hesitation that
in this case, we can say directly that your donation saves the lives of our heroes, for which I always say a huge, huge thank you. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There's Mono, Private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. I see all of you and express my gratitude both from myself and from our defenders. But if you don't see it in the description, there's a QR code as well. It also leads to the fundraiser. And on that note, Putin did not stop. So kokoshniks, apparently trillions of people are running to Russia, wanting to live there. And he also threatened Trump with escalation. He went even further and threatened Trump with escalation between Russia and the US if tomahawks are supplied to Ukraine. Putin stated that supplying Ukraine with American long-range Tomahawk missiles would mark a fundamentally new stage of escalation in relations between Russia and the US. Will this damage relations where there seemed to be some light at the end of the tunnel? Will this damage relations when there was light? It will. Putin, impossible to use Tomahawks without military personnel. Putin said it's impossible to use Tomahawks without involvement of American military personnel. Where was that light at end of tunnel supposed to appear? Putin has done nothing but mislead or talk circles around Trump. Putin has only misled or talked circles around Trump. He mumbled, Trump walks away satisfied. Putin shells Ukrainian cities. He mumbled a tube, Trump walks satisfied, night Putin shelling Ukrainian cities. That is, he realized that no one was planning to impose sanctions just yet, but sanctions of a different level loomed. But then suddenly, sanctions of a different level started looming, I mean Tomahawk missiles, and Putin made threats. To make threats like, if you do that, our friendly relations will end. What kind of friendly relations can you possibly have with this dancing dinosaur? Explain it to me. By the way, neither of them, I think, knows how to be friends or even intends to. So basically, Putin said that we'll shoot down those Tomahawks, we'll improve our air defense system. But how improve it if Tomahawks wipe it out? And how will you improve it if those Tomahawks, with the right approach, take it out quickly? With the right approach, pretty quickly, and Putin reminded us that the US supplied Ukraine with long-range ATACMS missiles, which caused some damage, but the Russian military learned how to shoot them down. But how did they learn? When a new air defense Wunderwaffe appeared, ATACMS flew in just fine when we had them, hitting military targets perfectly, just great. And notice, everyone is threatening war, but not Putin. He's somehow avoiding escalation, like he's had some Botox and is trying to keep a straight face, doesn't want to, just doesn't want to. Because he understands that if he threatens Trump directly, not through his alcoholic sidekick, Medvedev, but directly, it will end very badly for him. And of course, he started up his favorite tune again, that Russia is fighting all the NATO countries. Simple question. No, let's do it this way. Teller Seyan, here's a starred problem from the Skanevi textbook. Simple question. Russians, here's a starred problem from the Skanevi textbook. How many NATO soldiers have died in this war? How many NATO soldiers have died in this war? Putin has been fighting all the NATO countries for 4 years. Putin has fought NATO for 4 years. How many? On the Russian side, we know there are over 1 million dead and wounded. 1 million dead and wounded. So how many NATO soldiers have died? And in response to the words about a paper tiger, Putin said, yeah, so what are you going to do to me? You called me a paper tiger, and then what? Go deal with this paper tiger, but you see, things turn out differently there, said Putin. So here, Putin is basically telling Trump, you can call me names all year long, but you're still a hippo. You talk about me, but you're really talking about yourself. It's a paper tiger, and then what? Go deal with this paper tiger, but as it turns out, everything is different there, said Putin. So here, Putin is directly telling Trump, you can call me names all year long, but you're still a hippo. You talk about me, but you're really talking about yourself. That's about the level of argumentation here. And Putin says, if you call me a paper tiger, then defeat me. That's the only thing you can agree with. And now, our favorite segment, how to outplay everyone without attracting the attention of the orderlies. Putin stated that he does not see himself as an emperor. All these questions that are asked to him from the audience, I think everyone understands perfectly well that they are all pre-approved. So someone from the audience asks him whether he feels like Emperor Alexander I, who ruled the empire for 24 years. Someone asked if he felt Emperor Alexander the Fence, ruling for 24 years. And also Putin was negotiating a new world order. Putin negotiating new world order. Putin replied, no, I am not emperor, elected for a term. Putin replied, no, I do not consider myself an emperor because I was elected by the people for a specific term. But then he reset those terms. Then he added more terms for himself. He added more terms. After resetting his terms in 2020, Putin is in power for 25 years. So after resetting his terms in 2020, Putin has already been in power for 25 years, longer than any ruler since Stalin. And in fact, he sees himself figure-level Russian emperors, tsars. And in fact, he really does see himself as a figure on the level of Russian emperors, tsars. You know, I think he actually associates himself more with Peter the Great. In June 2022, Putin told young entrepreneurs Peter the Great fought the Great Northern War for 21 years. In June 2022, Putin, speaking to young entrepreneurs, said Peter the Great fought the Great Northern War for 21 years. He didn't bargain. He was taking back and strengthening, taking back and strengthening. Apparently, it's our turn now to take back and strengthen as well. What exactly have you strengthened? What have you taken back? Are you planning to give half of Russia back to China? That's exactly where things are heading, by the way. Don't forget, friends, to subscribe to this channel. Calm analysis helps in these turbulent times. There are already 456,000 of us, and I always thank you for the sensible atmosphere in the comments, and it's always this sensible atmosphere that saves us from accidentally, like with Putin tilting the kokoshnik. His has already fallen to the side, so subscribe. Now to the news that has become routine in Europe, even though it shouldn't be happening at all. In Belgium, on the night of October 3rd, 15 drones were spotted over the Elsenborn military base in the east of Liège province. Munich airport suspended operations by drones. Munich airport suspended operations for hours from drones. So you see, and interestingly, in Munich, they even deployed a helicopter for patrol, but the search for these drones and those who might have launched them yielded no results. You know what? Take a look, a rock church nearby. Take a look, maybe there's an rock church nearby. I guarantee you the dome just opens up like this and out fly the drones. I guarantee you they're involved in this intimidation scheme. And before that, there were mass drone flights in northern Germany. By the way, these drones, a flock of 15, flew from Belgium to Germany. So things are really serious there. EU countries couldn't agree on a drone wall against Russia. The countries of the European Union failed to agree on creating a drone wall to protect against Russia. Macron says it's unrealistic to close 3,000 kilometers of border, and countries farther from Russia to west don't want eastern flank to use European funds. Macron says it's unrealistic to close 3,000 kilometers of border, and Western countries don't want the eastern flank to use European funds. In other words, it's extremely cynical. Why should countries that aren't being hit by these drones yet chip in, or rather, why should the eastern countries who plan to take money from those European funds get support? Chip in, why eastern countries from European funds? Well, basically, it's the same as always, but building a wall against drones is fighting the symptom, not the cause. A wall against drones fighting the symptom, not the cause. That is, the cause is the idiotic leadership of the Russian Federation. The cause sits in the Kremlin, that 1.5 meter tall one. Another issue, a wall is useless if drones launch from Russian Shadow Fleet tankers or beyond. You'd need to close the entire coastline. Another issue, you can build any wall, but if drones launch from Russian tankers in the Shadow Fleet or beyond, a wall won't matter. You'd need to close the entire coastline. That's impossible. It's impossible. So here, everyone needs to fight the root cause together. More weapons for Ukraine, more sanctions against Russia. When the colossus with feet of clay starts to topple, it will smash its bald head on everything as it falls. The world will breathe easier, and the Prime Minister of Poland reported daily incidents in the Baltic Sea, which he called war. Donald Tusk recently spoke in Copenhagen at a meeting with Europeans and said that the first illusion was and remains that there is no war. Donald Tusk spoke in Copenhagen with European leaders. The first illusion is there is no war. Some of us like to use terms such as full-scale aggression, incidents, provocations. Some of us like to use terms such as full-scale aggression, incidents, provocations. No, it's war, a new kind of war. No war, new war. Complex war, Tusk said. It's complex, but it's war, Tusk said. Well done, Tusk. Well done. Well done, Tusk. Well done. But Europe has a unique case, a unique opportunity to destroy by someone else's hands what will later come to them. To destroy someone's hands what them. Russia's military-industrial complex lost equipment it can't restore. I've said it many times already. The Russian military-industrial complex, a ton of equipment that they will never be able to restore again. A ton of equipment that will be very hard for them to get. Well, if this is war, maybe it's time to act like it's wartime. The Allies opened a second front too. Allies opened second front. Those were quite the times, weren't they? And Tusk also said that numerous attempts to illegally cross the Polish-Belarusian border are recorded daily, as well as attacks on Polish servicemen, which have already resulted in fatalities. That's so. That's actually how it is. The migrants coming from the Belarusian side attack Polish border guards and soldiers, sometimes even with knives. They tape knives to sticks, so they really do pose a real threat. Border guards and soldiers, and sometimes they even tape knives to sticks with duct tape, so they really do pose a real threat. And one such attack ended with a wounded soldier dying in the hospital. But what's surprising is that when the border was closed, when the Poles closed the border with Belarus, China sent its delegation several times, even to Belarus. Well, it's surprising. When the border was closed, when the Poles closed the border with Belarus, China sent its delegation several times, both to Belarus and to Poland, to resolve the issue with its transit, which goes through Belarus and then across the Polish border. So clearly there is a very effective lever over the Lukashenko regime to put him in a position where if the Belarusians can't control the border from their side when it comes to migrants, and there's a whole story there because these migrants don't just appear out of nowhere, they're gathered in an organized way and brought through Russia, to put him in a position where if Belarusians can't control their border from their side regarding migrants, and there's a story there, these migrants don't just appear, they're gathered, organized, brought through Russia into Belarus, then escorted to the border. Many are misled. Many are misled. They charge them more money, we'll guide you to Europe. They charge them more money, we'll show you the path to Europe, you'll get benefits, it will be great. Abandon border. They leave the border, and then they're on their own. They've paid, now they have to make their own way through. And they're on their own. Paid the money, they have to make it. So this is no excuse. No excuse in any way. But if Poland in an ultimatum tells Lukashenko, you control the border on your side. If there's another attack on our border, we'll close your railway and road crossings. You control the border on your side. If there's another attack on our border, we'll close your railway and road crossings. And then you, poor thing, will have to crawl on your knees before Xi Jinping, explaining why you and Putin together can't keep those migrants under control, or rather, why you're actually sending them to the border. So, well, Tusk also made a very interesting point. He said that Moscow's advantage lies in their psychological readiness for sacrifice and suffering. They are ready to fight. They are ready to fight, sacrifice, and suffer. Sacrifice, suffer. And that's exactly their psychological advantage. Sometimes we find ourselves not determined or focused enough. In general, it's an interesting thought that Russians really are willing to live without comfort. It's an interesting idea that Russians are willing to live uncomfortably. I showed you Chita, and that's not even the worst backwater, excuse my French. But Europe isn't Europe. Europe has gotten comfortable. Europe has already become accustomed to this in comfort. Now is a unique opportunity. Unique. Why not take advantage of it? I don't understand. At least a little bit, come on. You can certainly sort things out with the substantial Russian assets, our very dear European partners. Obvious Putin started the war, Russia obliged to pay reparations. Well, who still doesn't see that Putin started the war, that Russia must pay reparations and give Orban a kick in the backside? He's blackmailing the European Union, strutting around, intimidating more than 20 countries there. Look, look where we've ended up. By the way, about Orban, someone who's earning petrodollars. This Stakhanovite is scaring everyone. This Stakhanovite scares all with war. Ukraine, stop helping Ukraine. Ukraine not be accepted anywhere. Ukraine anywhere. This is not our war. This is not our war. We should not supply weapons. We shouldn't be supplying weapons and so on. But now he's come up with a new talking point. That Hungary will go to war with Russia if Ukraine is able to become a member of the European Union. Hungary goes to war with Russia if Ukraine joins the European Union. Logic? So what's his logic? That if Ukraine becomes a member of the European Union and Russia attacks Ukraine again, then Hungary will be obliged to enter the war. What are you talking about? No one owes anything to anyone. I'm sure NATO thinks 100 times before entering a war if Putin attacks countries. I'm sure NATO would think 100 times before entering a war if Putin attacks one of the countries. Not all alliance countries would rush to help. Well, not all alliance countries rush to help. Consultations for... Consultations about consultations, Article 4 hanging by a thread. By the time they get to Article 5, it will already be a disaster. For this reason, Orban said that Ukraine could drag us all into war and that Hungarians shouldn't be concerned about the opinions of the other 26 EU countries. What matters is only what their own state thinks, Orban stated. And he said that Ukraine has a very difficult fate. Why should we share it? Why should we share this difficult fate? He asked this question about that difficult fate. He posed this question. He says every nation can decide. He says every nation has the right to decide. Every nation has the right to decide Russian oil and gas through its territory for Orban. Each nation has the right to decide if Russian oil and gas passes through its territory. Why care Orban's opinion on this matter? Why should we care about Orban's opinion on this matter? And what if other countries hold a referendum and ask whether they want to be in the same union as Orban? And what if other countries hold a referendum and ask whether they want to be in the same union as Orban, who takes twice as much from European funds as he puts in? Good question, isn't it? Good question, isn't it? Well, basically, Viktor Orban does whatever he is simply allowed to do. I hope for reform of this voting system and that certain people will be shown the door. I hope for a reform of this voting system. People shown the door, take care of loved ones. And you, friends, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Subscribe channel. And let's help our soldiers from the 101st Separate Brigade. The fundraiser, the link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Fundraiser link in description video. Wishing us all a peaceful day and glory to Ukraine. Wishing us all a peaceful day and glory to Ukraine.